Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. I've got to get the Gothenburg catchphrase in when it comes to Gothenburg beers on the channel, as you know. But for this review we are going to return to a brewery that you've seen me review many things from before, and this was a beer that really kind of just piqued my curiosity actually. So for this review then we are going to return to Stigbergets Bryggeri for what must be my 25th or so review that I've done from them, because these guys are very prolific these days, and we're going to have a look at the Mimåsa today. So this one comes in at 6.5% ABV. It's another New England hazy style IPA, and from what I understand this is a special version of the Amazing Haze that has had oranges added to it, and it's named after the cocktail mimosa, which is usually champagne with a citrus juice, normally orange, added into it. So yeah, this should be a really interesting beer. Amazing Haze, as I've told you many a time, is one of the kind of cult classic Swedish New England hazy IPAs, however you want to term it, and I would say that there's a group of 4 of those. There is the GBG Beer Week 2016, which is now known as the new and improved GBG Beer Week. There is the Amazing Haze, of course. Then you have the Narangi from OO Brewing. All 3 of those were created by the same brewer, incidentally, Ole Andersson. And then you have the New Sweden IPA from Opigårds Bryggeri as well. And then a lot of other breweries have come after that and done some really interesting stuff too. Probably if Brewski had had a regular range, you probably could have included one of those beers within that as well, because Brewski were doing the New England Hazies from quite early on as well. But yeah, a very well respected brewery these days, probably one of the best known Swedish craft breweries at the moment, and I am very curious to see what this beer has in store for us, because if you've watched the channel before you will know that I love big orangey leaning IPAs actually, and Amazing Haze, from what I remember, is hopped with Mosaic, so this one should be very orangey and tangerine and things. So fingers crossed this is another good beer. This one was released as part of the Tillfälligt sortiment in Systembolaget on the 29th, I want to say, of September 2020. So yeah, pick this one up while you can. I'm not sure how much longer this one is going to be available for, so have a go at it and just get it while it's still in the shops, because it probably will disappear quite quickly, as Stigbergets limited releases tend to do. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Very curious to see what this beer has in store for us, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stigbergets Bryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more from these guys in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is that you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. Anyway, to tell you a little bit about Stigbergets Bryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you already, Stigbergets Bryggeri are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, up there on the west coast, and the company was founded by Nils Hultkrantz and Richard Simonsson. So these 2 guys own 2 bars that share the one kitchen. This is the Bar Kino and the Haga Beyonds Cafe, which can be found on Linnegatan in the city, and these opened back in 2007. The building in which these 2 places are located is actually an independent cinema, and they've got some really interesting films there. If you want to see what it looks like, you can check out my out and about video that I did when I was up in Gothenburg back in, what would that have been, like October or so of 2019. I got quite a surprise when I went there to see that this was actually a cinema. I never made the connection between kino and cinema for some reason. But yeah, very nice place to go. It's the sort of unofficial tap room of both OO Brewing and of Stigbergets Bryggeri as well. But originally the idea that these guys had was that they could brew a few beers to sell in the bars, but this led to them kegging the beer and selling it to other pubs, and eventually to bottling the beers, which began in November of 2014. The original beers that they were making were mainly English and German styles, but they really started to make their name when they switched the focus to the hoppy American styles of beer. The original head brewer was Ole Andersson, who is one of the co-owners of OO Brewing, and he left in April of 2017, if I'm remembering rightly, and he was replaced for a short period of time by Barnaby Struve, who was one of the vice presidents at Three Floyds over in Munster in Indiana in the US, but he only stayed with them for a short while to kind of tide the company over before they could find somebody else. But they have moved on, and they've been doing very, very well recently. They've moved to a brewery at Party Halarna in I think that was about 2017 or so as well, and they were brewing 5,000 litre batches at a time there, and they also began working on some sour beers as well. They started selling their beers in these 440ml cans as opposed to the 330ml bottles, because this allowed them to export a lot more. That said, a number of their collaboration beers and the higher alcohol ones are sold in the kind of skinny sort of Red Bull type 330ml cans. But they now have a brew team at the brewery of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown in London, and then Lucas Munraid, who was the main brewer for All In Brewing, one of the numerous gypsy breweries around Gothenburg, but he's very, very well known as well. He's a very talented brewer as well, actually. But recently, as of summer 2020, these guys have moved to a new brewery in Ringen, and they're apparently considering brewing a Gothenburg lambic beer as well, which should be quite interesting. But at this new facility, they've got the possibility for a bar and apparently swimming facilities as well, actually. So it'll be very interesting to see how that develops, because they were saying in one of the articles I read recently, they want to make the brewery a kind of experience brewery. So who knows, maybe we can go and film an out and about video for you at Stigbergets sometime. And I would love to have Niels and Richard on the channel at some point for a Meet the Brewery segment. We'll need to see if we can sort that out. The original notes I had for this brewery, actually, I think it was Niels that gave me them, if I remember rightly. But these guys opened up a bar in Stockholm in about April of 2020, and they've also opened their own folk ale shop in Gothenburg as well. For those of you watching outside of Sweden, if a beer or any alcohol is above 3.5% ABV, you cannot sell it in the supermarkets. Then it has to go to Systembolaget, the national monopoly on alcohol, if you like. But anything below 3.5% you can sell privately or in the supermarkets and things, and this is usually termed for beer, folk ale, people's beer, and anything above that is known as stark ale. As of October 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 85 different kinds of beer, and they're usually releasing 2 or 3 every month through the local Småskaligt in Systembolaget. Actually, last month I think I had like 3 or 4 beers from these guys, but I usually keep an eye on what Stigbergets are releasing, and they have been getting a bit more diverse in terms of styles recently. They've released a triple, a barley wine, a pilsner recently, which are in their more kind of classic series of beers, I guess you could say, but they are still keeping the hopheads happy with these big kind of hazy New England IPAs, actually. And the last one that I reviewed, I think the last beer I reviewed from these guys was actually the Chronic, which was a beautiful triple IPA, and I do hope that they do that one kind of semi-regularly, because that really was a very, very nicely done triple IPA, actually. So if you do come across the Chronic, you will enjoy that one, but of course you can try the GBG Beer Week and the Amazing Haze. If you haven't had anything from this brewery, I'd recommend you try those and then try some of their newer beers. But if you see another style of beer that you like from these guys, you will enjoy it. They had some really nice coffee stouts as well, the Yang Awake and what was it? It was Trouble Sleep and then Yang Awake, 2 different coffee stouts actually, which were very, very nice. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Stigbergets Bryggeri for the moment. One of the iconic Swedish craft breweries at the moment that generate a lot of hype when they release new beers, and they have really, I think they've kind of stepped it up over the last maybe sort of 8-9 months, something like that. Their beers have been really kind of starting to push it again, which has been really interesting. So yeah, check out this brewery if you get the chance. But that's all I can tell you for the moment. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open this beer up. As you can see, it is quite similar there. This one, yeah, Mimåsa IPA with orange. The artwork on this is actually quite similar to the West Coast IPA that they do. And if you buy that beer, don't make the mistake of thinking that it's a West Coast American IPA. It's a West Coast Swedish IPA, so it is a kind of more hazy, sort of more bready leaning New England IPA. So yeah, I am wondering, maybe I told you lies, that this beer is the West Coast IPA with oranges added to it. I'm not quite sure. I'm guessing it would make sense with the artwork. I wouldn't think it would be the Amazing Haze, but I'm not quite sure about that. I'm sure it was on Glassbanking actually that I read that the Mimåsa was a special version of Amazing Haze with oranges added to it actually. So I could be wrong. So this one will either be the West Coast IPA with oranges, or it will be the Amazing Haze with oranges added to it, from what I understand. But yeah, 6.5% IPA, this one with oranges, and this spelling of Mimosa, of course, is the Swedish one, so Mimosa. Yeah, but yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. As I mentioned earlier, this beer was released as part of the Tillfällig assortment, sorry, on the 29th of September 2020. So yeah, hopefully this is a nice beer. Very curious about this. Yeah, I think we've got about 2/3 of it in the can there. But yeah, there we go. So, getting a few big bubbles sticking to the side of the glass there. But yeah, as you can see with this one, it's poured kind of pretty much as you would expect from a New England IPA. It's got a lovely kind of bright yellowy leaning colour to it. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. There's a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head. The head, incidentally, is about 1/3 of a finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. This one's fading away to just be a kind of thin foamy layer, though that's just going to gradually fade away. But yeah, it certainly looks the part. If we shine the light through this, it's certainly not the haziest of New England IPAs that you're going to come across. It's 6.5%, though you probably wouldn't expect that. As you go up the alcohol scale, you get more oats and you get more wheat, and these are the main things that give your haze in the hazy IPA category. So yeah, it certainly looks the part. It looks quite similar to, you know, either of the West Coast IPA or the Amazing Haze that Stigbergets have done in the past actually. So yeah, nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. Let's have a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. Oh, I think this is Amazing Haze. I think it is the Amazing Haze actually. There's just something about the aroma that tells me that. And you know, I had the triple dry hopped version of Amazing Haze, the Amazing Haze, recently. And it's just quite familiar. There's just something, a bit of memory coming back with this one, so I'm pretty sure it is the Amazing Haze that's been used as the base for this beer. And Amazing Haze would make sense too, because it's hopped only with Mosaic, from what I understand, at least in the latter stages. It might have something else as a bittering hop too, but from what I remember, Amazing Haze is a Mosaic only beer. And this one, you know, with the oranges added to it, Mosaic is a kind of tangerine orangey leaning hop. 14% alpha acid usually, 13-14%. So it would make sense to use Amazing Haze to add oranges to. But yeah, this one, it comes across very nicely. The oranges give the beer a real sort of zestiness, a real kind of zesty freshness to it. And that's quite interesting, because normally if you add fruit to the beer, sometimes it can dominate. But really this one's just adding, it feels like it's adding another dimension to the beer actually, which is quite nice. If you're into these kind of fruity IPAs, a series of beers that I would recommend you check out would be the Fever series from Brewski and Helsingborg. Those guys really know what they're doing when it comes to the fruity IPAs. So if that's your thing, check out, you know, Mango Fever, Passion Fever, and they've got Pango IPA as well, which is a very nice one. And probably, you know, in fairness, Pango IPA's been around a long time. Maybe you could count that in the same category as the Amazing Haze and the Narangi and the GBG Beer Week and New Sweden IPA. You know, maybe that's maybe fair, because Pango IPA has been around for a long time. That's a very good IPA for sure. So maybe I need to think about that. But yeah, the aroma of this one is very, very nice. So what you're going to notice when you smell more and more of this beer, the big oily citrusy oranges really jump out of this one at you, and it's really nice how that actually goes together. I really like how everything kind of pieces together in in this beer in that sense. The oranges are big and oily, but they do have a big zesty kind of character to them as well. On the malty side of things, you can smell this one. It is definitely more of an old school New England IPA, which is what I said with the double Narangi that we had recently from OO as well. Remember, same brewer. But yeah, this one's got a nice, you can feel a little bit more of that kind of pale malty base in the aroma. You can feel that nice kind of pale malty bready sort of thing. You do get a little bit of a bitey wheaty note out of it, but I think this one does lean more towards the kind of oaty side of things. You can smell a little bit of that oaty creaminess in there, and it almost feels as if the big oily oranges are just sitting on top of that, which is nice. So yeah, nice bit of white wheaty bitiness with this one, bit of a lighter kind of white bready character, a little bit of an oaty creaminess in there, and then you've got some, there is a wee touch of a biscuity sweetness to the beer too, but the malt base for me is pretty straight up and pretty old school. It doesn't have that kind of Werther's Original oily butter candy type thing that you can get out of the more modern, I guess you could say, Stigbergets beers like the Chronic and other things that we've reviewed recently. The King of Hops was a great one as well. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, so those were really nice beers actually. But yeah, the oily character that we get out of this one is lovely. I really like this. Yeah, for me, I'm a sucker for orange IPAs, so I think you guys will know this one is right down my street. As we always say though, beer is very subjective, and you know, beer is very subjective, and you know, different people like different things. So some of you guys might think some of the other IPAs from Stigbergets are better than this, and that's fair enough. You know, what you expect from this brewery is a solid IPA, but I could sit and smell this all day. I think we've covered the malt base well enough though. On the hoppy side of things, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one, which is kind of what you'd expect if there's mosaic involved. You've got a nice little bit of a floral aromaticity to it. It's quite spicy as well actually, so I do wonder, you know, has there been a bit of Columbus used in this in the early stages of the boil? You know, maybe they have used a bit of Columbus as a bittering hop, and then Mosaic is the late addition hop. As I've told you before, if you add hops within the first hour of the boil, that's when you get more bitterness out of them. After the first hour, within the last half hour usually, that's when you get the trade-off of bitterness in favour of fruit aromas and flavours and stuff like this. But yeah, you've got a nice bit of floral aromaticity to it, a little touch of spiciness and some lighter grassiness in there. And on the fruity side of things, this one is really nice actually. So yeah, it's the oranges, the addition of these oranges that are really dominating the aroma. As I said to you, it smells very fresh and really quite zesty actually, which I really quite like. But yeah, you are getting more of the fruity addition, if you like, is definitely the more kind of zesty thing, but you're also getting the more oily tangerine oranges out of this one as well from the Mosaic hops. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I get a wee touch of passion fruit out of this one as well. You can smell a bit of a slightly darker tropical fruit in there too. It is almost a little bit like a kind of passion fruity quality. So yeah, I really am getting I'm getting a good little bit of that out of this one too, which is quite nice. So yeah, definitely behind the tangerine oranges, there's a wee touch of a kind of passion fruity note in there as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah, definitely a nice little bit of tropical character to this one, but also some, you know, mainly it's leaning towards those nice big oily oranges. So take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma. This one I've probably spent a bit too much time on the aroma because it just ticks the boxes for me. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. This one is the Mimåsa, 6.5% New England Hazy IPA, whatever you want to call it, from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg. This one, from what I understand, is the Amazing Haze. And I'm pretty sure about that now. This one is the Amazing Haze with some oranges added to it, which should make it very interesting. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål. Oh yeah, that's really nice actually. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. It almost feels, first impression is that it has two different degrees of wetness to it. You can feel the separation almost of the, you can definitely feel the separation of the oranges that have been added to this one and the orangey flavours that are extracted from the Mosaic hops. You can really get that out of this one. And it works really well. I mean, the oranges that come out of that are additions, they really come out as just being a little bit stronger and a little bit more zesty, just a bit more dominant in terms of their flavour. So that's really interesting with this beer. So yeah, I really like how this goes together, but I think, you know, to be honest, I kind of knew before doing this review that I probably would like this one, so surprise surprise. But yeah, this one for me, I really quite like it. This is a really nice, light and quite drinkable sort of hazy IPA, but I've always found that the classic Gothenburg hazy IPAs, if you like, they have always been a little bit lighter. They're not they have got a good little bit of kind of crispness and breadiness to them. It's only more recently that the beer style, I think, in Sweden has evolved to be a bit more kind of thick and creamy almost. But I think at the time when we were first getting into these beers, it wouldn't have seemed like that. So I think they've got progressively more kind of thick and creamy as time has gone on. Because these ones now, the more original ones, do feel a little bit light in comparison to some of the other ones. But I will say this is another very, very solid beer actually, and it's quite interesting because you've got quite a few of the breweries playing around with their old recipes now and experimenting with them a little bit. OO Brewing, of course, released the Double Narangi. These guys had the Bigger Bolder, which was a new version of the GBG Beer Week 2016. They had the Amazing Haze, the triple dry hop version, and now they've got this one. So it's kind of interesting that they're starting to play around a bit more with recipes rather than, well, they are creating new ones. It's kind of interesting that they're doing this in addition to the new beers. But yeah, let's break the flavour of this one down then. Straight away with this beer, you get a nice little bit of, you do get a nice little bit of a kind of pale malty quality. That white bready note, that blankets the middle of your tongue. If you go to the back third of your palate, you will get a little bit more, you will get a wee bit more of a kind of graininess coming out of this one. There are a few little more kind of bitey, wheaty elements coming out of the beer, which I do like. And yeah, the way the wheatiness in this beer comes together, I think, is very nice. So yeah, the way that this all works together, it does go together very nicely actually. So yeah, so you've got that nice kind of more crisp white bready note there. On the back third of your palate, as I say, you've got a bit of a thicker bready note, but you've also got some of the bitey wheaty characters coming out of the beer. And that kind of suits, that actually balances out the big zestiness that this beer has as well. But as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, you can feel it just gets a little bit lighter. And if you move towards the kind of front of that middle third of your tongue, I think that's where the oatiness comes out. But the oatiness in this one isn't as thick as some of the other ones that I've had, but as you move further back, you can feel the oatiness, the oaty creaminess just spreads back a little bit, and then on top of the kind of back half of that middle third of your tongue, you do get a wee touch of just a slight biscuity quality in there. But the malt base for me strikes me as being quite bready, a little bit more bitey and wheaty, and it just has a little bit of an oaty character as well. It's more of an old school New England hazy IPA type base, this one. It's definitely got a bit more kind of crispness to it, which I think is very nice actually. So it gets a thumbs up from me. It does get a thumb up from me, this one. The malt base is, pardon me, really quite nicely done. So yeah, it works well. On the hoppy side of things then, and this is where the beer starts to get quite interesting. In the back corners of the palate, you've definitely got a little bit of earthiness there, and that for me signifies Mosaic. That makes me pretty sure that there is that it is Amazing Haze in there. But then again, I think the West Coast IPA that they did might have had might have had a bit of Mosaic in it as well. But anyway, as you go further forward along the sides of the palate there, you can feel it gradually develops to be a more kind of floral and aromatic note. It's not quite as spicy as the aroma would have you believe, so I am doubting myself a little bit now when I said there was Columbus in this one. I might be wrong. But yeah, as you move further forward along the side of the palate there, you've got a really nice kind of big floral aromaticity coming out of this one, which is great. So yeah, for me, this is a really very, very nice, it is a really very nice just take on the style, if you like. This one, for me, it suits me down to the ground actually. This would be quite a nice kind of summery release, to be honest. I think this would work really well. It would also work well as a kind of winter IPA, to be honest, as well, when I think about it. A bit of chocolate orange or something, who knows. But yeah, the flavour that comes out of this one is lovely. But around the front curve of the palate you get a little bit of lighter grassiness to the beer, but you also get the oily zestiness from the oranges that they've added into the brew. As I've always told you, when it comes to adding fruit into the beer, I really find that what it does when you add that fruit in, it suppresses a little bit of the IBUs of the beer, and you just get the kind of juicy fruitiness around the edge of the tongue. So you really get that dark, that slightly darker, citrusy, orangey, oily character around the front edge of the tongue. So this beer really is a little bit more citrusy and zesty than it is bitter. But then again, these New England hazy IPAs are usually about 30 IBUs, so you don't notice it so much with this one, because you do get a little bit of bitterness from the earthy side of it and some of the floral notes. And in fairness, the spiciness of those floral notes does build a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste, but definitely a big oily, orangey character around the kind of front edge of the palate there. Behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get the nice oily bubble, where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So if you go towards the back of that, for me there is a wee tiny touch of a kind of like slightly passion fruity note, but as you move further forward from that, it's kind of orangey tangerines all the way. It's the mosaic all the way on this one. So yeah, it really does lean towards the orangey side of things, this, and I'm really not surprised that I like this one. You know, my favourite hop back in the day was Amarillo, then Mosaic came along and kind of took over. I like Mandarina Bavaria as well. You know, these days you've got Azaka and Sabro, other American hops that are quite orangey. You've got Waiheke in New Zealand as well, and I want to say Pacifica is another one that's quite orangey too. So I love the big orangey IPA. So this, you know, maybe take my review with a bit of a pinch of salt with this one, but this one I really enjoy it. And like I said earlier, you can really feel the degree of difference between these, the kind of orangey side of this beer. You can really feel the difference with the slightly more oily. Well, in fairness, both of them are oily. So on just behind the very front tip of the tongue, you've got a kind of more oily bubble, where the kind of tangerine, orangey notes from the Mosaic are coming out in this one. But then you can feel on the very edge of the tongue, on the very tip of the tongue, you've got that bigger, more how do you say? You have that bigger, more how would we say? We've got we have the bigger, more kind of zesty, if you like, the more bigger, slightly more sour orange, to be honest with you. You can really feel that degree of difference between these, because the fruits that are extracted from the hops are slightly sweeter, whereas the ones that come straight out the fruit are more zesty, sour and oily, if you like. That's probably a good way to describe it actually. So just pay attention to that front edge of your tongue, and then the bit behind the very front tip of your palate as well, and you'll really notice the degree of difference between the two types of orangey flavour that you have in here. But yeah, I think that's covered the flavour profile of this beer really well. A nice kind of smooth and quite crisp beer in terms of its malt base, nice bit of big floral aromaticity as you'd expect, and then a lovely oily orangey note. And when it's called Mimosa, that is kind of what you'd expect actually. I do have to say I like the artwork on this one. In Aberdeen, where I studied chemistry, the seagulls were genetically modified. They were like fucking massive things. They were about the size of cats, and they used to attack you and try and take your food and things. So I'm not the greatest fan of seagulls actually, and I think I said that when I originally reviewed the West Coast IPA from these guys. I hate seagulls, cannot stand them. Sky rats basically, so yeah, do not like them. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, I'd say this beer I'd say that it's quite it's kind of right in the middle of the spectrum, if you like. It's the middle section of mid-bodied. The carbonation for me is very smooth. This one has a good balance between being wet and oily, but it leans a little bit more towards the oily side of things. But by no means is this the most oily IPA that you're going to come across, West Coast or New England. You know, West Coast definitely not, and New England, it's got a wee touch of oiliness for sure. But yeah, there is a wee touch of oiliness in there, quite wet, but at the same time it's quite a smooth one. I think smooth is probably the best descriptor for this one. But in terms of the hoppy bitterness, I think this one is a fairly standard 30 IBUs, maybe 25. It sits around there. I think the kind of zestiness of the fruits that you have in this kind of suppresses a bit of the IBUs, so it could well even be a bit less than that. But like I said to you, the malt base is quite smooth. There's a bit of bitiness from it, from the wheat. A little bit of a biscuity sweetness, but mainly it's quite a smooth and almost quite crisp mouthfeel in the malt base with this one. Good little bit of hoppy bitterness, as I said, about 25 or 30 IBUs, and then on the fruity side of things you've got a real kind of zesty, slightly sour quality to this one, and you've also got a little bit more of a kind of sweet, a little bit of a sweeter orange, but both of them are quite oily, to be honest with you as well. So the fruity side of this beer is really quite zesty, but also a little touch oily and slightly sweet as well. But yeah, I think this is a really, really nicely done beer, and I think, you know, I would recommend that you try this one. I think they've pulled this off quite well. Sometimes I've tried a few fruit versions of different beers, notably the Hulipan from Hulia Bryggeri recently. I had there was a grapefruit version and an appelsine, an orange version of that too, and I wasn't, you know, I wasn't the greatest fan of those, to be honest, compared to the original, but I think this one works really quite well. But in fairness, it might well have been that I need to kind of adjust my palate. I'm not the greatest fan of fruited IPAs. I'd rather drink something that's a bit more kind of pure. When it comes to adjuncts, I'm more into adding the adjuncts into imperial stouts than I am into IPAs and lighter beers, to be honest with you. But yeah, this one I think is really nicely done. So maybe it would be cool to have a go at the grapefruit and the orange versions of the Hulipan again. I don't know, but I think this one turned out very, very nicely, to be honest with you. So yeah, have a little go at this one for yourself and see what you think. But personally, as an orange fan, I really like this one. So take the review with a bit of pinch of salt, but I think Stigbergets have pulled off another solid beer here. So let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stigbergets Bryggeri as well. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future, but in the meantime, have a go at some of their beers. I highly recommend Amazing Haze and the GBG Beer Week, and if you can try those first and then try some of their other beers as well. The Pilsner is very nice, and I think that's a regular now. So yeah, just try some of the stuff that you find from these guys. A very, very solid brewery all round. But yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. As always, let me know your own thoughts about this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stigbergets Bryggeri as well. You will see more reviews from these guys probably next month. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Check out my social media, check out Stigbergets Bryggeri, and I'll catch you guys very soon. This was the Mimåsa 6.5% New England Hazy, Swedish West Coast, Gothenburg style IPA, whatever you want to call it, from Stigbergets Bryggeri. Basically, I think the Amazing Haze with a bit of orange added to it, but it turned out very nicely in my mind. Slange, skål, cheers, catch you guys very soon.